The Chinese Navy made a fatal mistake. They challenged the wrong destroyer. They didn't know that beneath the waves, a $2 billion ghost had been shadowing them for 72 hours. The moment it surfaced, the game was over. August 13th, 2025. The South China Sea simmered under a haze of tension, its waves hiding a storm of steel ready to break. At 06:45 hours, the USS Higgins, DDG-76, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer bristling with 96 vertical launch cells, cut through the disputed waters of Scarborough Shoal at a steady 20 knots. This wasn't just any patch of ocean. Scarborough Shoal, a strategic linchpin in the South China Sea, sat within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone but was claimed by Beijing as its own. The USS Higgins was on a freedom of navigation operation, a deliberate challenge to China's maritime ambitions in a region where $3 trillion in trade flows annually. For the 300 sailors aboard, it was another day defending open seas. But for Beijing, it was an affront they couldn't ignore. At 06:52, the horizon shifted. The USS Higgins AN-SPY 1D radar, a marvel of American engineering capable of tracking 200 targets simultaneously, painted a troubling picture. Two Chinese Type 052D destroyers, each armed with 64 YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, and a Type 054A frigate emerged from the morning mist, closing at 28 knots. A voice crackled over the radio, cold and deliberate. "American warship, you are in Chinese waters. Leave immediately or face consequences." The message came from the lead Chinese destroyer, its radar locking onto the Higgins with fire control precision, a move one step shy of open hostility. Inside the Higgins Combat Information Center, Captain Laura Martinez, a 20-year veteran of Pacific operations, stared at the tactical display with icy calm. Her crew, trained to the edge of perfection, knew the math. The Chinese ships were 120 nautical miles out, weapons range in under 10 minutes. The South China Sea had long been a powder keg. Scarborough Shoal, a reef rich with fish and strategic value, had sparked clashes before, between Chinese Coast Guard vessels and Filipino fishermen, between PLA Navy ships and U.S. patrols. Beijing's claim, rooted in a vague 9-dash line, defied the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The USS Higgins' mission was clear: assert the right of free passage in international waters. But China saw it as provocation, a direct challenge to their regional dominance. The air thickened with the weight of geopolitics. Would this be the moment Beijing forced the U.S. Navy to blink? Or had they just picked a fight with the wrong destroyer? The world was watching, and the answer would come in fire and steel. What do you think happens when a Chinese warship challenges the U.S. Navy head-on? Let's dive into the truth. At 06:57, the Chinese formation tightened, their ships fanning out to flank the USS Higgins. The lead Type 052D destroyer, identified as the CNS Kunming, surged to 30 knots, its bow slicing through the waves like a predator closing on prey. Its YJ-18 missiles, capable of Mach 0.8 sprints over 180 nautical miles, were a credible threat if they could get a clean shot. The second destroyer and the frigate trailed, forming a triangle to box in the American ship. Overhead, a Chinese Z-9 helicopter buzzed at 5,000 feet, its dipping sonar probing for subsurface threats. The Higgins radar operators tagged it instantly, their AN-SPY 1D painting every rotor blade with surgical clarity. Captain Martinez's voice cut through the CIC. "Hold steady, they're testing us." The crew snapped into action. The Higgins Aegis combat system, a $500 million network of sensors and weapons, hummed to life, calculating firing solutions faster than any human could. At 07:01, the Chinese made their move. The Kunming's Type 346A radar locked onto the Higgins with a continuous wave, a provocative act signaling imminent missile launch. The frigate followed. Its HQ-16 missiles prepped for mid-range engagement. The radio crackled again. American vessel, this is your final warning. Vacate Chinese territory. Martinez's response was textbook Navy. This is USS Higgins, operating in international waters under UNCLOS. We will not alter course. Her words carried the weight of American resolve, backed by 96 vertical launch cells loaded with SM-6 and SM-2 missiles, each capable of turning a Chinese ship into a smoking wreck. At 0705, the situation escalated. The Chinese helicopter dropped a sonar buoy 2 nautical miles off the Higgins port side, a clear attempt to detect American submarines. Unbeknownst to the PLA Navy, the USS Illinois, a Virginia-class attack submarine, had been shadowing their formation for 72 hours, silent as a ghost at 300 feet below. Its AN/BQQ-10 sonar suite had cataloged every propeller turn of the Chinese ships. The Higgins Cooperative Engagement capability shared this data across the battle network, linking with a P-8A Poseidon patrolling 200 miles away. The Poseidon's sensors confirmed 2 additional Chinese assets, a Type 093 submarine lurking 50 nautical miles north, and a flight of 4 J-15 fighters launching from the carrier CNS Liaoning, 180 miles east. The Chinese were orchestrating a multi-domain show of force, surface, air, and subsurface. But they'd miscalculated. The U.S. Navy had spent decades mastering this game. By 07-2, the Kunming crossed a red line. Its fire control radar maintained its lock for 45 seconds, long enough to simulate a missile launch in naval warfare. This was as close to pulling the trigger as you could get without firing. The Higgins response was immediate but disciplined. The Aegis system assigned SM-6 interceptors to every Chinese missile tube, updating firing solutions in real time, Martinez ordered. Activate countermeasures, let's show them we're not blinking. The ship's AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite unleashed a barrage of jamming signals, scrambling the Kunming's radar picture. Ghost contacts multiplied on Chinese screens, their targeting systems thrown into chaos. Simultaneously, 2 FA-18E Super Hornets from the USS Ronald Reagan, 300 miles away, roared into the theater at Mach 1.2, their AN/APG-79 radars locking onto the J-15s before the Chinese pilots could react. At 07:18, the Chinese pushed harder. The Type 054A frigate launched a decoy drone, a cheap $50,000 UAV meant to distract the Higgins defenses. It was a mistake. The destroyer's Phalanx CIWS, a 6-barreled Gatling gun spitting 4,500 rounds per minute, shredded the drone in seconds, its wreckage splashing into the sea. The Chinese submarine surfaced briefly at 07:20, likely to confirm its position, only to be pinged by the Illinois' active sonar, a deliberate message. We see you. The J-15s, struggling with limited fuel from their carrier's ski jump launch, broke off their approach, unable to match the FA-18's range or sensor suite. The Chinese formation was unraveling, their coordination fractured by American electronic warfare and superior situational awareness. The climax came at 0725. The Kunming, desperate to assert dominance, executed a high-speed turn to cut off the Higgins path, coming within 1,000 yards, a reckless maneuver in contested waters. Martinez seized the moment. Full countermeasures, deploy decoys. The Higgins launched a salvo of Nulka decoys, small rockets that mimicked the ship's radar signature, luring the Chinese radar away. Simultaneously, the Illinois surfaced 5 nautical miles from the Kunming, its black hull gleaming in the morning sun. The psychological blow was instant. Chinese lookouts scrambled, their radios erupting in frantic Mandarin. For 90 seconds, the Illinois held position, its torpedo tubes loaded with Mark 48 ADCAPs, each capable of sinking a destroyer in a single hit. The message was clear: one wrong move, and the South China Sea would become a Chinese graveyard. By 0735, the Chinese formation began to withdraw. The Kunming and its escorts slowed to 15 knots, retreating eastward toward the Liaoning. The J-15s limped back to their carrier, their fuel lights blinking. The Type 093 submarine dove deep, its acoustic signature fading as it fled. The USS Higgins held its course, unyielding, its radar still tracking every Chinese asset within 200 miles. The confrontation had lasted 50 minutes, with no shots fired but a clear victor. The Chinese had gambled on intimidation, banking on their numbers and proximity to force a U.S. retreat. Instead, they'd faced a masterclass in naval dominance. The Higgins Aegis system, backed by the Illinois stealth and the Reagan's air power, had turned Beijing's provocation into a lesson in futility. The aftermath rippled across the Indo-Pacific. In Manila, Filipino officials hailed the U.S. operation as a defense of their maritime rights. In Tokyo and Canberra, allies reaffirmed commitments to joint patrols. Beijing's state media spun the encounter as a successful defense of their claims. But the truth was undeniable. Their ships had retreated, their pilots outmaneuvered, their submarine exposed. The USS Higgins had sailed through Scarborough Shoal unscathed, its mission intact. The cost to China wasn't measured in steel or lives, but in credibility. They'd challenged the wrong destroyer and paid with global humiliation. For the sailors aboard the Higgins, the morning was a testament to training and discipline. Captain Martinez's calm under pressure, the crew's flawless execution, and the seamless integration of air, surface, and subsurface assets had upheld a 75-year tradition of American naval supremacy. The South China Sea remained open, its waves carrying a message to Beijing. The U.S. Navy doesn't blink. What do you think this standoff means for the future of the South China Sea? Will China back down, or is this just the prelude to a larger storm? Share your thoughts below. And if you value this kind of analysis, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay locked into the battles shaping